evening. This is Justin Ford for From the Frontline. Tonight we will be discussing the Great Commission course in Cape Town. In the studio with me is Dr. Peter Hammond, the founder of Frontline Fellowship, who has been involved in serving persecuted Christians for over 40 years in 38 countries. Dr. Hammond, coming up soon is the Great Commission course. For how many years has Frontline Fellowship been conducting Great Commission courses, and from where do the participants come?
It's for the last 26 years that we've been organizing Great Commission courses. So the participants have come from as far afield as Australia and America, Britain and Botswana, Canada and the Congo, Ghana and Germany, Namibia and New Zealand, Malawi and Mozambique, Sudan and South Africa, Zambia and Zimbabwe. So it's extraordinary how many nations God has drawn participants for the Great Commission course over the last 26 years.
Please explain to us what the Great Commission course is all about.
So the Great Commission course, the next one is going to be the 3rd to the 22nd of January in 2025. And it's held near Table Mountain and near the ocean. As you know, Cape Town is sitting astride two oceans. We've got the warm Indian Ocean, the cold Atlantic meeting, which is why Cape Town is often the Cape of Storms. But we prefer the term the Cape of Good Hope. But the Great Commission course is designed for all those who want to make Christ's Great Commission our supreme ambition. This is for missions-minded young people. We join with other Christians who are dedicated to making Christ's Great Commission our supreme ambition at the foot of Africa in Cape Town at the beginning of each year. This is a uniquely practical, intensive missionary course for anyone who desires to be more innovative and more effective in cross-cultural evangelism and discipleship. We believe that the last command of our Lord Jesus Christ should be our first concern. So we focused on the greatest need and the greatest priority of our time.
What is the greatest need and greatest priority of our time?
Africa's greatest and most urgent needs are Bibles and Bible teaching. Operation World informs us there are now over 680 million people in Africa who claim to be Christians. The number of Christians in Africa is set to double by 2050. So in just 25 years, if the present trends continue, Operation World says Africa will be home to 1.2 billion Christians. That'll make Africa the most Christian continent in the world, the continent with the most numbers of Christians. In fact, there could be more Christians in Africa than the whole of North America, the whole of Europe and of Asia. It's possible that there might even be more Christians in Africa than the whole world in 2050, but it depends. There's tremendous church growth in South America, so you'll certainly be able to say there'll be more Christians in the global South than in the global North. Now, when I was first converted, 1977, that was the year in which the global South equaled the number of Christians in the global North. So historically, Christianity has been a Northern Hemisphere religion. It's been the predominant faith of North America and of Europe. But in 1977, the year I was converted, Christians in Africa and South America became equal to the number of Christians in North America and Europe. And now we're heading to a place that there's going to be overwhelmingly more. In fact, we're looking at the situation that there'll be, I think even now we're already at 85% of all the Christians in the world are in the so-called global South. So South America and Africa are now where the balance of power is in the church. The church has shifted from being a primarily North American and Europe or Western religion to where it's more a third world or developing world or global South phenomenon. And that means that we have a tremendous opportunity, but we also have a tremendous responsibility and challenge. The problem is there's over 500 million churchgoers in Africa today who do not yet have a Bible or even a New Testament. 500 million Africans need a Bible who don't have a Bible now. Even more incredible is most of the pastors in Africa have no formal Bible college training. Now, not only do most pastors have no formal training, most pastors have no access to a library. Study Bibles are rare, and most pastors don't even have a full Bible. There are Bibles there are pastors in Africa who don't even have a Bible. Can you imagine? I know of pastors who have to borrow a Bible to do their sermon preparation for Sunday, literally. So study Bibles are rare, and by God's grace, our Literature for Africa ministry distributes an average of 100 tons of Bibles and books, Sunday school materials and gospel booklets in over 100 languages every year, completely free. So Africa's greatest and most urgent need is Bibles, and the greatest missionary priority is Bible teaching. And these are two of the primary focuses of our mission. And therefore, our vision is summarized in a slogan, Africa for Christ.
What led you to design the Great Commission course, Dr. Hammond?
Well, we got many requests every year from volunteers around the world looking for short-term missionary opportunities. And, it's a bit of a, I won't call it the Russian roulette, but it's a bit of a gamble, because you can get some very good short-term missionary volunteers who've got experience, who know what to do, who are well-trained in evangelism, who's sensitive in cross-cultural ministry, who are knowledgeable about local cultures, and they come here and they're able to make a good impact. But that's rare. To be honest, most people volunteering for short-term missionary work have no missionary experience. In fact, sadly, you've got people volunteering who might not have even done any Christian work in their home culture. Now, a person who's never done Sunday school, never run a youth group, never done an outreach where it's safe and legal and comfortable, where they speak the same language and where they come from the same culture, how do you think they're going to learn in a different country, different language, different culture? So people need training to be involved in ministry. Now, there is a place for short-term missionary work, especially if that short-term missionary work is film evangelism, there's a message, there's a charisma, a core of the gospel to present, or literature distribution, because even a person with little experience might be able to do that well, but they still need some training. So we saw the need the first Frontline Fellowship camps were primarily to prepare people who wanted to go. So a person wants to go on outreaches, and so, right, we're going to do a January outreach. But first, they come to a camp, we give them some training, which is physical, spiritual, practical, in order to prepare the person for the work. So it's like a selection and a training course. And we saw more and more that people volunteering for short-term ministry need training. And so the Great Commission course was meant to combine both outreaches and training. And outreaches and the training work together. So the people come, we teach them about, for example, Muslim evangelism, then we take them out in the field and they engage in some Muslim evangelism. We teach them about how to reach animists, then we take them how to reach animists. We teach them how to reach atheists and skeptics, we take them into the field and they have the chance to test that out. So we train them in literature evangelism, film evangelism, crisis counseling and so on. And then we take them out and they get the opportunity to put it into practice. So a Great Commission course is inherently designed to select and train people to see if they are prepared for the field and to prepare them for the field. So there's a selection side, there's a training side. And because of people wanting to work with our mission, we had to find a way to prepare them in a short-term, intensive way, because maybe they've only got a month that they've been able to cut out to come overseas. So we had to make sure it was a short, sharp course. We've made a 3-week course we found ideal. We've done over the years different sizes. And we found since 1998 we've set on this 3-week Great Commission course format, and it seems to work. So Frontline Fellowship's been pioneering missionary work in war-torn areas, Marxist countries like Mozambique and Angola, especially in the 1980s, and then Islamic Sudan since 1995. Frontline Fellowship smuggled over 750,000 Bibles and Christian books in 24 languages just into war-torn Islamic Sudan. And we have trained thousands of pastors, teachers, chaplains, medics in restricted access areas during the same time period. So Frontline Fellowship designed the Great Commission course as a practical missionary training program for people who desire to make their lives count for eternity. If it's for short-term outreach, good, but we of course hope that many will turn us into a lifestyle of evangelism. And so to those who want to see behind the scenes what's actually involved in the cross-cultural missionary work, particularly in areas where Christians are persecuted for faith, that's what the Great Commission course is particularly aimed at, because we are a mission to the persecuted church, we're a mission to restricted access areas, and that's why we make Bible smuggling and working behind enemy lines, tracking, anti-tracking, part of our speciality in the program. We also work in Muslim countries and communist countries, so we've also focused quite a lot on how to reach Muslims and communists for the Lord. But still, we're using evangelism, explosion, way the master, basic building blocks that a person can use wherever they are to be effective evangelists. So the Great Commission course is a general introduction to missions, but it's particularly effective for those who are interested in cross-cultural missions in communist and Muslim areas in particular.
What can participants expect from a Great Commission course?
Well, a Great Commission course like the one coming up on the 3rd of January, it starts on Friday the 3rd of January 2025. It's intensive, it's practical, there's daily physical training, so we start in the mornings with PT. Fortunately, it's summer, so the sun's up. Of course, when we've got a winter Great Commission course, people have been getting up hours before the sun rises for PT, because in our winter, the sun can only rise at sometimes 8:30, middle of July. So there's PT in the morning, there's inspiring practical lectures in the mornings, and then there's outreaches and practicals in the afternoons and workshops, hands-on ministry in streets and marketplaces. And in the evenings, there's often inspirational presentations, normally from different fields, sometimes some films, and there's night hikes, outreaches, where we might have a practical like Bible smuggling operations in the pitch dark, sometimes in the rain in Newlands Forest, and there's hunter teams and there are smuggling teams, and you've got to get across the river, through the river. You will get wet, you might get soaked, kind of things, and it's how to walk quietly, how to be able to move stealthily in the forest, to go behind enemy lines. And of course, there's always backpacks of gospel booklets, normally in Arabic. I think it's pointless doing physical training without literature, because we don't go in the field just on a sightseeing tour. We always have to carry literature, so that's also strengthening weight training to get out into the field. And even when we're climbing up and over the mountains, we are able to carry large amounts of literature.
The GCC, or Great Commission course, might sound somewhat intimidating to people not used to much physical activity like PT and mountain climbing. Is this a course only for the super fit?
No, in fact, we've got some inspiring testimonies of people who tried and started, and like one young lady, she was in fact the secretary for my father-in-law based in Arizona, and on the first day when told to run around Rondebosch Common, she says, I've never run anywhere in my whole life. So we explained to her, we'll walk around the common, and of course you get more benefit from running that same distance at speed in a short space time. But my wife, who's a physical training person, said, if you walk 2.4 kilometers or you run it, you get the same benefit. Now, you'll get it quick if you run, but if you walk the full distance, you're getting the same benefit. It's not the speed, it's the distance. So she walked around the first few days, but by the end of the 3 weeks, she was running around it, and she was fit enough for the Table Mountain hike. Now, we've had people who've arrived to us not very fit at all, but they all make the Table Mountain hike at the end. And the reason is, if you can do 3 weeks of PT, you've built up the resistance. We also have several hikes in between. So by the time the 3 weeks is over, even the people who started unfit are fit enough to hike the whole of Table Mountain. So this dear sister, she got on the hike, she has complained to me at one point, I've burnt more calories than I'm worth, she said. Well, she not only got to the top of Table Mountain and down again, when she got back to Arizona, she thought, I'm so fit now. She started on long distance runs, then she worked her way up to half marathons, and she ended up being a missionary to India, and she's got 4 children, and she's in India, successful missionary in the field. So there's one Exhibit A success story. We've had others. We had someone who joined us who was, he's from Transvaal, and he was terrified of claustrophobia. One of our obstacle course requirements was going underwater through a tunnel. It's not a very long tunnel, but to put your head underwater and to go through it was for some people a real obstacle. And he didn't, and we encouraged him. And in the end, he pushed himself, he got through it. And after that, he became like our star pupil. He did everything, and he had such a great sense of accomplishment to overcome his fear and to do what he had thought he couldn't do, that afterwards he was like the best and the most enthusiastic at everything. And again, just another success story to show you mustn't take the first results. You can keep persevering. And so we've had people, there was one man who came to our camp and he was on crutches. He had just had an operation, knee replacement or something. Well, we didn't expect a man on crutches to do our PT, but every day he was out there, he did the PT. He did the whole PT. Now, where we ran, he walked. But he did the full distance, so he'd be late for breakfast and so on. But we were all very impressed. We respect him because even though he's on crutches and he is old, he's older than me, and he did everything. And it just shows that even if you're on crutches, it's the right attitude. And, okay, he didn't win any speed awards, but the fact is he did the whole thing. And he didn't let the fact he just had an operation, had a wonky knee or replacement knee or something, keep him from doing everything. And when others were doing one kind of exercise, he was doing another. So, maybe he couldn't do as well on the press-ups, but he did the sit-ups. And he was active the whole time. He did not make an allowance for himself that, I'm just light duty. I'm going to wander in the background, watch everyone doing it while I sit down on the bench. No, he did everything he could do. And I think that's the point, is the attitude makes more difference. And we're not after super fit people, but super fit people love our camps and courses because they get some competition, they get pushed a bit further. And but no, it's definitely not just for the super fit.
What are some of the subjects that are dealt with in a Great Commission course?
Let me give a couple. So the challenge of Livingston today, the greatness of the Great Commission, missions in the Old Testament. Amazing how many people think there's no missions in the Old Testament, but there's lots. The Gospel in Acts, cross-cultural communication in the book of Acts, how to make disciples of all the nations, short-term and long-term missions, motives for missions, always important to examine our motives, discerning between true and false guidance, how can we know what God's will is, living by faith, very few people have lived by faith, missions in the Psalms, amazing how much of the Psalms is speaking about missions, let the earth hear his voice and so on, the eschatology of victory and the great essential of missions, evangelizing animists, spiritual warfare, demonology and deliverance, reclaiming surrendered ground, freedom in Christ, God amongst the Zulus, the challenge of Hinduism, the challenge of Islam, comparing the Bible with the Quran, how to effectively evangelize Muslims, how to be effective in missions without becoming a victim, interpersonal conflicts in missions and churches, safety and security for mission workers, how to survive in the field, effective public speaking. Many people list public speaking as the biggest fear, so we definitely want to overcome that. The greatest missionary is the Bible, magnificent mothers with a mission, the challenge of missions. I mean, these are just some of the subject matters we've catered for. Understanding humanism and so on. So we want to understand the world and we want to know how we can be effective in evangelism. Normally, Way of the Master and Evangelism Explosion are key parts of it. Creation evangelism is also key. And we've also had responses like these. These are some of the written responses from participants in the Great Commission course. This is a great and awesome way to prepare for the mission field. I've become more effective in evangelism. I've been motivated for growth and knowledge. Great multifunctional lectures and assignments that all contribute to being a better missionary. Discipline of the mind, body and spirit, using it for God's glory. I now have more confidence to go out and share my faith. Extremely well organized, professional, excellent presentations. This course has been developed from first-hand experience. This is reality! Exclamation mark. The scenery was great, the food also, but the content overshadowed it all. The best missions program I've ever seen. Very practical. I've benefited more than I ever thought possible. This is a turning point for my life. I was amazed at the excellent selection of subjects. I reckon it's the best all-round conference I've attended anywhere. I found this course extremely full without being burdensome, an outstanding example of variety on every relevant subject. The GCC is the best course in the country. So those are just some of the responses we've gotten from our previous participants. People have come from literally every part of the world.
You've mentioned lectures and PT and hikes. Are there any other aspects to the course? Any other outings or?
Yes, there's some historic ones. We sometimes have gone to the oldest mission station in the continent, in the whole of Southern Hemisphere actually, Genadendal, which is an old and fascinating mission station of the Moravians in the Western Cape. And sometimes we've gone to the castle and gone around the oldest building in the Southern Hemisphere. We've seen some other great historic sites like the oldest Protestant church in the Southern Hemisphere, which is the Strand Street Lutheran Church. So we've done different day trips, and sometimes there's interacting with wildlife, going to eagle encounter and encountering eagles, owls, and to the cheetah outreach where people can interact with cheetahs. These are not zoos or anything. These are wildlife sanctuaries where they rehabilitate animals who might have been injured in the wild or struck by cars or electrocuted on telephone lines and so on. And these rehabilitation centers we take people to interact with some real animals and wildlife. We've had other kinds of practicals. There's debating skills, games. There's all kinds of fun activities. Sometimes some new and outstanding films that can impact a person. So the discussion group's also very popular. We've gone to some historic sites, and there's always sports days, of course, and things like that. I think our folks revel in everything from hikes in the mountains to these different sports, from touch rugby and team building exercise, problem solving, building rafts, getting across rivers, tug of war, rope activities, things like this. So there's all kinds of fun activities. Last year, one of the popular events was going to a water park, and it was actually a dam where people are water skiing and doing all kinds of interesting water sports, and amazing how much some folks can enjoy that. Of course, if you come to a place like Cape Town, we're right on the ocean. So on occasion, on some free time, people have gone to like the Two Oceans Aquarium. We've even done dragon boat paddling, races and so on. Good team building, problem solving type of activities, obstacle crossing and so on. Those are some of the other activities. And I think for many people, the variety concert is a real special time when each person can take part in a team or single activity of musical item. And we've got some gifted musical people, skits, comedies, a whole variety concert of everyone offering something or being part of a choir or team to present something. And you can see quite a bit of competition coming through here. But the variety concert is another real highlight for many. We invite other friends from outside to come there, and that's something of a amusing part. On occasion, we've even had barn dancing, sort of these fun, interactive things. So there's a bit of interesting culture that's been brought in at different times, depending what's possible and available. Visiting nearby mission stations, work party is always a key pro thing. Sometimes there's a lot of survival and practical activities where not only how to fix vehicles, how to get your vehicle going in a crisis. For some of the ladies on our courses, they find first time they ever learned how to change a tire or how to check oil and water and some basic things like this with vehicles. We've got sometimes a vehicle first aid course, how to do film evangelism, how to set up these big screens and get things operating with the generators and so on. So there are first aid workshops as well, where we teach people how to do the basics, breathing, bleeding, breakages and burns. Practical things are added, and now every Great Commission course is different depending on the people we've got available and what skills we can teach. But I've taught at different times things such as sword fighting techniques and knife fighting, unarmed combat, shooting with rifles, shotgun, pistols, and get to a farm and people can have a shooting day. So the Great Commission course, there's no boredom. There's a lot of variety and a lot of activities, all things that are going to be practical and make one a better missionary in the field.
And the age, I mean, is this targeted at younger people or all ages?
Well, I'm 64 and I've done everything. I've done all the hikes. I don't lead from behind, I lead from the front, and I do the PT as well, and I do the hikes. So we've had people even older than me doing these courses. So we've had people in their 60s. We've had youngsters. My oldest daughter, when she was 10, she started attending and doing everything in the Great Commission course. Everything, the hikes, the exams, the whole lot. And I should say, I've left it out. There are exams, there are assignments, there's Bible exam, there's practical exams, there's missions exams, there's maps, things like this. So we throw at people things like sermon preparation, Bible study preparation, because in missions, that's real. You're often traveling, you're getting little sleep, and you've still got to do paperwork and reports and sermon preparation and so on. And so there's the academic side as well. And there's prizes for the physical and for the spiritual. We've got the Bible drill is a very popular game, and it gets quite a lot of competition, and that's a very prized award to win the Bible drill, to show best at Bible memorization, getting to place in the Bible when you draw swords, Bible's above your head, and then go, you're given a verse, and the first one to get there, the one who dominates, there's prize for them. So the academic prizes, there's also the physical prizes. There's people who get the fastest runner, the best at push-ups, the best at sit-ups, with the ladies, they've had some interesting things like foot claps. That's an interesting idea that they sort of do a dancing kind of PT where they're clapping their feet together. You've got to be careful so you don't fall flat on your face, which we'd probably do as men, but these women have had other things where they've excelled at. So we've had a variety of awards that come at the end, and there's prizes, great books, study Bibles, and so on. So yes, there are assignments and exams and tests and practicals and workshops, and everyone on the course gets the opportunity to do some preaching or testifying as well. Those who are gifted preachers will have the chance to preach maybe in a local church. Those who don't feel confident for that could at least give a testimony. Everyone gets a chance to go on a radio program. We do some interviews with everyone giving a chance to give their testimony or short devotions. So they get an opportunity to do some media as well. And then with those who are physically gifted are acknowledged as well. There's some people who are... It's extraordinary to get somebody who's good at both sides. Very unusual. Mostly you see people who've excelled more on the physical side and others who've excelled more on the academic side. But still, on a rare occasion, you get somebody who might have mastered both sides. And so it's a test. The person gets tested, they're put under pressure, and at the end there's a tremendous sense of accomplishment that, I finished the hikes, finished the summits, passed the exam, and I'm still alive. I've survived the whole thing. And so it's an accomplishment, and everyone who's gone through it has said it has really helped them. Interestingly, some of our participants have said their biggest fear was getting out in the street and doing outreaches among strangers. But amazingly, quite a lot of those very same people have put down later, this was the highlight of the camp. Getting on the street, sharing my faith, and having an opportunity to lead someone to Christ. And for many, they said that certainly was the highlight for them. Because what's the good of having a theoretical camp and you don't get out and do the practical? So the Great Commission course, a person who comes to the course will be physically fit at the end, because 3 weeks of PT every day, excluding Sundays. I've had people say, never have I appreciated the day of rest more than on a Great Commission course, because the one day we weren't doing PT or any of the other physical demands. So I think it's a real, it's a boot camp, it's a training camp, it's a selection program, it's preparation. Everyone learns a lot, they experience a lot, and they make good friends. When people go through some demanding activities, there's a bond and a camaraderie. And there's still a group that my daughter runs called the Amazing People Group, and it's people who went through the 2018 Great Commission course, which was a particularly difficult year. And out of that came missionaries like Shana Vasaki, who's the granddaughter of President P.W. Botha. She ended up as a missionary to Ukrainians, and she's still there, still in Europe, still ministering to Ukrainians. When the war started, we said, "Are you coming back, Shannon?" And she said, "How can I? They need me now more than ever. You can't leave when the war starts." So I know several missionaries who've been working in Ukraine, and there's Shanna's one of the people who graduated from the Great Commission course 2018. So there are others who've gone to Mozambique and other parts of the world. We've got missionaries who are full-time in Taiwan, Japan, China, all parts of the world. We've got one of our peoples actually in Kazakhstan, an amazing place that people can end up in after being involved in this work. So yes, the Great Commission course has been quite an experience. And now I've done it for years, and my children were all involved from the time they were young. And I think generally from about 10, 11, 12, they started to do the whole thing. But they would join in early with parts. So even when my son was 6, he joined us for the Table Mountain hike. And I had some Nigerians saying to me, "Peter's very cruel. He has a 6-year-old son hiking up here where we all want to give up, but we can't give up while a 6-year-old is still striding up the mountain." But that wasn't the intention at all. It was just I didn't want my children to miss out on opportunities for climbing. And so as they loved hiking, and so my children have, even from age 6, been joining us for the Table Mountain hike. And yes, I think for some of these people struggling up the hills, they got either inspiration or they felt too rebuked to give up because there's some kid out there also taking part in this. But of course, the youngster wasn't doing all the other things that they were doing, which is the exams and assignments and all the rest of it. So yes, I think the Great Commission course is literally for all ages, but the young people seem to enjoy it the most.
Going back to the academic side, what are some of the textbooks that are used on the Great Commission course?
The Greatest Century of Missions is a key textbook because that's 19 biographies of 19 missionaries of the 19th century, the Greatest Century of Missions, well illustrated, and that's a key textbook. We've got Putting Feet to Your Faith, Chaplain's Handbook, Security and Survival Handbook, and those are important textbooks that have helped. We are using the Great Commission Manual, and I am preparing a Great Commission Handbook that should be ready for printing very soon. The book's actually ready. The problem is just the funds for printing it. And so the Great Commission Handbook has been ready for printing for quite a while. We will probably do an in-house print job if we can't get it to the printer for a decent quantity beforehand. This is designed to be a handbook for Bible colleges as well, a textbook for mission colleges. The Great Commission Handbook has been prepared for quite a while, subtitle Making Christ's Great Commission Our Supreme Ambition. And this is actually dedicated to George Verver, a good friend and the founder of Operation Mobilization. And George Verver's lifelong energetic dedication to fulfilling the Great Commission, and his books like Hunger for Reality had a very formative impact on my life and inspired me to dedicate my life to making Christ's Great Commission my supreme ambition. So I look forward to the Great Commission Handbook can be printed and more widely available, but that is another one of our handbooks, textbooks. Of course, we've got a Muslim evangelism book as well, which is incorporated in the Slavery, Terrorism, Islam book. But there's great materials we make available. Some of the prizes given would be our Frontline Behind Enemy Lines for Christ book, and Bill Bathman's Going Through and Going On, which is Bible Smuggling Behind the Iron Curtain Ministry, testimonies. These are, some of those are awards that we give to people. Another textbook would be Biblical Preaching Handbook, because Biblical Preaching Handbook is so important. Most people are confused as to how effectively to preach, and that deals with everything from hermeneutics, biblical interpretation, to exegesis, how to study the Bible, to homiletics, how to deliver and preach these messages and how to apply it effectively. Sometimes we've also given out books like the 10 Commandments, God's Perfect Law of Liberty, because if we can preach the law of God, it's the law of the Lord that is perfect, converting the soul. The law is the schoolmaster that leads us to Christ, that we can be justified by faith. So these are some of our good textbooks. Sometimes we've used the Power of Prayer Handbook. Reviving prayer has always been a key important thing to focus on. Sometimes we've had God Amongst the Zulus, the testimony of Erlo Stegan's work at Kwasabantu Mission, a major example of excellence. But there's always a lot of good books or awards for people who pass the exams at the end. But textbooks that everyone will have would definitely include the Great Commission Manual or Handbook and the Greatest Century of Missions. Nothing like teaching with examples of excellence.
Dr. Hammond, where can listeners learn more about this upcoming event and any other upcoming events and training and outreach opportunities lying ahead?
So, visiting www.frontlinemissionsa.org, frontlinemissionsa.org. The SA is short for South Africa, so frontlinemissionsa.org. That's the website. Look for events on the top, click on that, and that'll take you straight to the Biblical Worldview Summit and the Great Commission course. And by the way, the Great Commission course includes the Biblical Worldview Summit, which is effectively the first week of the Great Commission course. So at first, Great Commission course participants join with others for the Biblical Worldview Summit, and after that week, they carry on with a more intensive program because more people attend the Biblical Worldview Summit, less the Great Commission course. And the Great Commission course tends to be quite a small, intimate group. It's our Lord had a group of 12 amongst his disciples to be with him every day, and that's a good goal, but we've often had up to 24, even up to 30 on occasion, but we would never want more than that for a Great Commission course. Great Commission courses tend to be a small group of very dedicated people, and in fact you learn more in a smaller group. So the Great Commission course will go through the Biblical Worldview Summit first, which is the first week, and then continue for another 2 weeks. So the Great Commission course in total is a 3-week course. from the 3rd to the 22nd of January 2025.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hammond. In closing, I'd like to read from Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 to 20. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." Thank you very much for joining us for From the Frontline. God bless and good night.